Sometimes the people who promise to protect us are the very ones who destroy us. He left the country with nothing but hope. He returned as a billionaire, only to find his pregnant wife hawking on the streets. This is not just a love story. This is a story of betrayal, endurance, justice, and unforgettable reunion. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. In the midst of a quiet town, Tunde and Zara sat on a weathered wooden bench outside their tiny one-room apartment, bathed in the silver glow of the moon. Their home was modest, a simple structure with a leaky roof that groaned whenever the rain fell hard. Inside, a single bed and a threadbare mat were all they had, but to them it was enough. The world beyond their small street was uncertain, and their pockets were empty, but their hearts were full. Zara leaned her head against Tunde's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Her hands, small and calloused from daily chores, rested on her slightly rounded belly. "My love," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what if something happens to you over there? What if I never see you again?" Tunde held her tighter, brushing strands of hair from her face. "Nothing will happen, Zara. Promise you nothing. I will go, and I will endure everything if I must. But I will return. I will return and change our story, for us, for our child." Her eyes glimmered with tears. She was already carrying their first child, a tiny heartbeat she had felt only a few weeks ago. Her body was weak from hunger at times, yet her spirit remained unbroken. She had dreamed of this life, the life they were about to create, yet fear clung to her like a shadow. The opportunity had come unexpectedly. A distant business contact had reached out to Tunde, offering a chance to travel abroad to work and save, promising a path out of the grinding poverty that had defined their lives. It was a chance that could not be ignored. 4 days before leaving, they had walked the streets hand in hand, silently memorizing every corner of the town. The dusty playground where children laughed barefoot, the old mango tree under which they had shared their first kiss, and the market stalls that had sustained them through difficult times. On the morning of his departure, Zara's tears fell freely. Her cheeks were wet, her lips trembling, but she forced a smile that barely masked her sorrow. Tunde held her belly gently, pressing his hand over hers. "This child," he murmured, "will not grow up in suffering. I will see to that. I swear it, Zara. We will live differently. We will be happy." He pulled out an envelope and handed it to his closest childhood friend, Kunle, who had been with them through thick and thin. "Brother, every month I will send money through you," Tunde said, his voice low and serious. "Give it to Zara. Don't fail me. She depends on me, on us." Kunle placed his hand over his chest, eyes shining with what Tunde believed was loyalty. "On my life, I will never betray you," he swore, pounding his fist lightly against his chest. Tunde took one last look at Zara, memorizing the curve of her jaw, the softness of her eyes, the small crease in her forehead when she worried. He kissed her gently, then turned and walked toward the bus that would take him away from everything familiar. As the bus pulled away, Zara stood frozen, tears streaking her face, clutching her belly as if holding both Tunde and their unborn child close. In that moment, hope and fear intertwined. Hope that one day soon they would be free from hunger and struggle. Fear that the distance would be too much, that unseen forces could destroy everything they had promised each other. And none of them, neither Tunde, Zara, nor even Kunle, realized that betrayal had already planted its seed, quietly waiting in the shadows, ready to turn dreams into heartbreak. The moon rose higher, casting silver light across the town, as if silently watching over the couple and the promise that would soon be tested by fire. Life abroad was harsh for Tunde. The first days were the hardest. He slept on the floor of a small, crowded room, sharing it with 4 other men who spoke languages he barely understood. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, dust, and unwashed clothes. The nights were cold, and the thin blanket he had brought from home offered little comfort. By day, he worked at a restaurant, washing dishes until midnight, his hands red and raw from the scalding water. By morning, he was hauling heavy construction materials under the scorching sun, muscles aching, back stiff. Hunger gnawed at him, but he refused to eat much. Every kobo had a purpose. Every coin was meant for Zara, for their unborn child, for a life he promised to build. And every month, without fail, he sent money home to her through Kunle. "She is fine," Kunle said over the phone. "She sends her love. She prays for you." Tunde believed him. He worked harder, sacrificing sleep, comfort, and even his pride. Every drop of sweat was a deposit into a dream. A home for Zara, a life of safety for their child, a future they would never forget. But far away, in Olyawasi, Zara's reality was far from the picture Tunde had painted in his mind. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. No money arrived. Kunle's words became lies. "Tunde hasn't sent anything," he said with a shrug, his eyes avoiding hers. Zara's heart sank with every passing day. The small apartment they had rented together now felt like a prison. The landlord's patience wore thin. When the rent was overdue, she was thrown out into the dusty streets, carrying nothing but a small bundle of belongings and the swelling weight of her pregnancy. Her phone was disconnected. She could no longer call the one man she longed to hear. Friends and relatives, once warm and inviting, now avoided her gaze. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. "Her husband has forgotten her. She is carrying a child alone. Maybe she wasn't faithful." The humiliation pierced her soul. Each morning she woke with aching bones, a growling stomach, and a mind heavy with worry. How would she eat today? Where would she sleep tonight? How would she protect the little life growing inside her? With no other options, Zara borrowed a small tray from a neighbor and began hawking on the streets. Oranges, bottled water, groundnut, anything she could sell to survive. Pregnant, weary, and exhausted, she faced the scorn of strangers daily. Passers-by mocked her. Some shouted insults, others threw coins with a sneer. Sun beat her skin to a deep red, rain drenched her, and every gust of wind seemed to carry whispers of shame. Yet she stood tall. Pride refused to let her crumble completely. She smiled at customers who were cruel, laughed when children teased, and held her growing belly with trembling hands. At night, when the city slept, she would find a quiet corner, sit on a cold stone step, and whisper softly to her unborn child. "My love, your father thinks we are safe. He believes I am cared for. He doesn't know the hunger, the cold, the shame. But I am fighting for you. I will survive." Sometimes tears streamed down her face, soaking the fabric of her worn dress. She would clutch her belly, whispering promises she hoped her child would remember. "I will not let this world break us. I will fight. We will have a better life. I promise." She thought of Tunde constantly. She imagined him working late, sending money, dreaming of their reunion. She told herself he was unaware, that he believed she was safe, and that one day, all this suffering would end. But nights were long, and the silence of suffering weighed heavily on her heart. The betrayal of Kunle, her once trusted family friend, cut deeper than hunger or rain. "Why would he lie? Why would he let me suffer like this?" she whispered to the night sky, her voice trembling. "Is this what it means to love someone from afar? To trust? To be abandoned?" Despite the pain, Zara remained resilient. Each day she woke, set up her small tray, and hawked with as much dignity as she could muster. Each smile she forced, each word of politeness she gave, was a battle against despair. And each night she whispered to her child, holding on to hope that love, truth, and justice would one day return to her life. Little did she know that the winds of destiny were already shifting. Somewhere across the ocean, Tunde was struggling, sacrificing, and dreaming of the moment he would return. And that day was coming. Life abroad was relentless. Every day tested Tunde in ways he had never imagined. He woke before dawn, the streets cold and damp, the sound of distant traffic and barking dogs echoing in the empty air. At the restaurant, he scrubbed dishes that smelled of grease and old food until his hands were raw, the hot water burning like fire. At the construction sites, he lifted heavy planks, carried cement bags heavier than himself, and worked under the blazing sun while his stomach growled for food he barely had. Nights were spent in a small, crowded room he shared with strangers. Sleep was thin and broken. The blankets reeked of sweat and mold. Yet he never complained. Every pang of hunger, every aching muscle, every humiliation he endured was for Zara, for the child growing inside her, for the life he had promised. Every month he sent money through Kunle. Despite the miles between them, he pictured Zara smiling when she received it, imagining her warmth and her love. "She is fine," Kunle would say. "She sends her love. She prays for you." But Tunde noticed cracks he tried to ignore. Kunle's voice sometimes wavered. There were long pauses on the phone. The man's reassurances sounded rehearsed. Yet hope anchored Tunde's heart. Years were a blur of work and sacrifice. He failed often, stumbled through missteps, faced betrayal from colleagues, and struggled to find a foothold in a world that seemed built for the privileged. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late. The streetlights flickered outside the small office where Tunde had been doing paperwork for a local business. A wealthy businessman noticed him, a man of sharp suits and sharper eyes. He saw determination, intelligence, and unyielding spirit in Tunde's weary face. He offered him a small promotion at first, then a partnership, then investment into Tunde's own venture. The transformation was gradual but unstoppable. Tunde moved from washing dishes and lifting heavy loads to signing contracts, leading meetings, and overseeing operations in sleek office buildings. The world that had once rejected him now opened its doors. Months turned into years, and slowly, the poor boy from Oluwasi became a self-made billionaire. He bought cars that gleamed under the sun, lived in apartments with sprawling city views, and walked streets where his name commanded respect. Yet, despite the luxury, his heart ached with questions he could not silence. Why haven't I heard from Zara? Why does Kunle avoid my calls? Why does my stomach tighten every time I think of her? No amount of wealth could fill the void of missing his wife. The longing to see Zara, to hold her, to protect her from the hardships she had endured, became a flame that wealth could not extinguish. Every victory in business, every check deposited in his bank account, felt hollow without knowing his family was safe. Finally the decision came. He would return home. Not as the struggling boy who had left. Not as the man dependent on promises of others. But as a man who had conquered the world, built a fortune, and carried the weight of sacrifice in his heart. The night he landed in Nigeria, the city welcomed him with flashing cameras, security escorts, and honking luxury cars. Fans and journalists flocked, eager to capture the billionaire who had risen from nothing. But Tunde's eyes saw none of it. He barely noticed the lights, the glamour, or the applause. His gaze searched through the crowd, through the streets he had once walked as a poor boy, through the city that had grown and changed without him. All he could see in his mind's eye was Zara, her smile, her hands, her growing belly, and the silent suffering he had unknowingly allowed. The streets, the crowd, the noise, all faded into the background. The longing, the worry, the anticipation, everything pointed toward a single truth. He had to find her. He whispered under his breath as the convoy moved through the city. "Where are you, my love? My Zara, my child. I will find you." Little did he know, the streets were about to reveal a truth that would shake him to his core. Tunde's convoy rolled through the bustling streets of Lagos, the city alive with noise, flashing lights, and the unending rhythm of life. Horns blared. Motorbikes weaved recklessly between cars. Street vendors called out their wares. The luxury cars, polished and gleaming, moved like a river of power through the chaos. Tunde barely noticed. He had seen it all before, the wealth, the glamour, the adoration, but tonight none of it mattered. His mind was consumed by one thought, Zara. The convoy slowed at a red light. Tunde's eyes wandered to the edge of the road, almost without thought. A woman approached the cars, hawking bottled water, her voice soft and cautious. "Sir, please buy." Tunde barely looked. There were hundreds of hawkers in the city. thousands of people struggling to survive. But then he heard the voice again. A whisper that struck deep into his heart, a voice he would never forget. It was Zara. Time seemed to stop. His hands gripped the steering wheel. His breath caught. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. She was standing there, thin, her face dusty from the day's sun and the city's grime. Her belly was round with their child, her shoulders stooped from exhaustion, and her eyes, those eyes he loved, were wide with disbelief. She dropped the tray she had carried, bottles clattering to the ground. Tunde! He leapt from the car as if pulled by an invisible force, leaving the convoy behind. Every eye on the street seemed to vanish, leaving only her. "What happened, Zara?" he cried, taking her hands in his. "Where is our home? Where is the money I sent?" Her body shook with sobs. The heat of the sun, the dust on her skin, the weight of her pregnancy. All of it was nothing compared to the grief and humiliation she had carried silently for years. "Kunle," she whispered, her voice trembling, raw with pain. "He lied, he stole everything. All the money you sent. Had nothing. Nothing but this tray, and our child." Tunde felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath him. Rage, sorrow, and guilt collided inside him. The betrayal of his closest friend, the suffering of the woman he loved, the helplessness of their unborn child. It was almost too much to bear. He held her close, shielding her from the bustling city, from the curious eyes, from the cruel indifference of the world. "I will fix this," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I promise you. I will fix everything." Tears streamed down her face, soaking into the dust on her cheeks. Her hands gripped his shirt, as if holding on for dear life. "I waited. I waited for you all these years. Believed you. I prayed." Tunde's chest tightened with sorrow. How had he not known? How could Kunle have betrayed them so completely? How could someone he had trusted more than a brother allow the woman he loved to suffer in silence? The city around them continued unabated. The horns, the traffic, the shouting vendors. But to Tunde, it was as if they were in a bubble, a world suspended in grief, love, and shock. "Zara, I am so sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I worked so hard to send for you. And he betrayed us. But I am here now. I am not leaving. I will never leave again." Her sobs softened, her head resting on his chest. I thought you had forgotten us. That you had abandoned me." "I could never abandon you," he whispered fiercely, holding her tighter. "You and this child are everything to me. And now, Kunle will pay for what he's done. I swear it." The traffic light changed, the world resumed its motion. But for Tunde and Zara, everything had changed. Their lives had been shattered and rebuilt in a single moment. The pain, the betrayal, the lost years, they were all there, but now so was hope. Tunde lifted her face, brushing away the dust and tears. "Come with me, Zara. Let's go home. Let's start again. I promise, no one will ever hurt you again." For the first time in years, a small, fragile smile touched Zara's lips. Between the dust, the sunburn, the exhaustion, and the heartbreak, there was a spark, the spark of love that had never died, no matter the years or the suffering. And as Tunde held his pregnant wife in his arms, standing in the middle of the traffic, surrounded by a city that never slept, he realized something powerful. Love, when tested by life's harshest trials, only becomes stronger. The city's heartbeat seemed to pause the moment Tunde stepped out of the convoy, gripping Zara's hands tightly. But he had little time for shock or grief. Action was necessary. The truth about Kunle had to be uncovered, and justice demanded no delay. Tunde summoned his most trusted lawyers and investigators. Every transaction, every receipt, every wire transfer that had been sent through Kunle was meticulously traced. What they found was staggering. Kunle had stolen every single payment Tunde had sent over the years. Luxury cars, flashy apartments, private vacations. The money meant to sustain Zara and their unborn child had funded a life of greed and indulgence. Kunle was confronted. The confrontation was swift, merciless, and public. The man who had once been Tunde's closest friend fell to his knees, face wet with tears, hands shaking, voice cracking. "Forgive me. I never meant. Tunde looked down at him, a cold fire burning in his eyes. "You didn't just steal money, Kunle. You stole years of her life. You stole her dignity. You let her suffer when I thought she was safe. You betrayed trust that no one can ever repay." Kunle's pleas echoed into the empty air, but Tunde walked away. The law took its course. Kunle was arrested, handcuffed, and led away. His empire of lies crumbling at last. Meanwhile, Tunde turned his attention fully to Zara. Her body was weak, her steps unsteady, but her spirit, though battered, remained unbroken. The city hospital became a sanctuary for the couple, a place where they could finally confront pain and begin healing. Tunde refused to leave her side. He held her hand through the long nights, brushed her hair from her sweaty face, and whispered promises he had made years ago, promises he would now fulfill. "My love, I failed you," he murmured one night, tears slipping down his cheeks. Zara squeezed his hand gently, her voice a soft anchor. "You didn't fail me. Life tested us, Tunde. But here we are. We survived. That is all that matters." Weeks later, after days of pain, prayers, and hope, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The moment he first held their son in his arms, Tunde felt a wave of humility and gratitude unlike anything he had ever known. All the wealth in the world, the skyscrapers, the private jets, the luxury cars, meant nothing compared to this tiny life, a living testament to their endurance and love. In the days that followed, Tunde's heart expanded beyond his personal joy. He realized that the suffering he and Zara endured was not unique. So many widows, hawkers, and struggling families were left to fend for themselves, powerless against a world that often ignored them. Determined to make a difference, Tunde's empire became more than a business. It became a force for good. He built homes for widows who had nowhere else to turn. Opened clinics offering free medical care to those who could not afford it. Offered microloans and training programs to street hawkers, giving them the tools to become business owners themselves. Through it all, he loved Zara with a renewed depth, not as a billionaire's wife, but as the woman who had endured betrayal, poverty, and pain without losing her heart or soul. Together, they forged a life that was rich not in material wealth, but in trust, respect, love, and shared purpose. The baby boy grew, his laughter echoing through their home, a constant reminder of what they had survived and achieved. Zara and Tunde found joy in small things: a quiet breakfast, a walk through their neighborhood, watching the sunset from the balcony of the home they had rebuilt together. And through every smile, every tender moment, they carried a lesson learned in the fire of hardship. Not everyone who smiles with you loves you. Silence can hide dangerous pain. Sacrifice without truth can become suffering. Love that survives hardship is unbreakable. Greed destroys, but honesty restores. Years later, when they stood hand in hand, looking at the city skyline and their thriving community projects, Tunde whispered to Zara, "We have more than wealth. We have life. We have love. And nothing, no betrayal, no hardship, can ever take that away." Zara smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "We survived, Tunde. And now we live." The story of their suffering, betrayal, and ultimate healing became a legend in their town, a tale of endurance, love, and the power of truth. A testament that even when life breaks you, the heart that is pure can rebuild, stronger and wiser than before. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video. Subscribe to this channel so you won't miss our next interesting story filled with love, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Until our next story,